I need advice fast. I got myself into a big mess because I dated his friend. Now he wants to divorce. I am in a very big mess because of my stupidity and desire for something new. I didn't know that he would find out about my mistake. He would actually want to end our marriage. I love him and I actually don't see myself marrying another man but him. What I did is wrong and ungodly. But why would the consequences or karma deal with only me? Why am I the only one suffering while I was not alone in this whole thing? I know I am the one to blame. I should have respected the vows I made to my husband in front of our guests, especially our families. It was wrong of me to go against my vows and commit adultery while I was married, but it doesn't change the fact that I wasn't the only one doing wrong. I dated his friend, so if he was to end our marriage, he should also end his friendships. Life isn't fair on women's rights. All the guys have codes of friendship, right? I think they call it a bro code, a code whereby you vow not to. It seems that there's a code among guys that says you either date or get into an intimate relationship with your friend's partner or sibling. The guy that I had an affair with had broken the code, but nothing was happening to him while I was suffering the consequences of our actions. I really need help with this one. I'm somehow confused, but I also want to fix my marriage with my husband. My husband Tony is male, 35, and I'm female, 33. We met at a mutual friend's wedding. Well, more like at my cousin's wedding. He was a friend of my cousin's husband. We were sitting at the same table. He was and still is a very handsome, clean, and sophisticated gentleman. I remember on the day we met I had worn a very long dress, so it somehow tripped me and I almost fell. Imagine falling in front of all the people that were in that hall. It would have been such a bummer and embarrassing. Luckily Tony was there to catch me before I fell. I was trying to stand when I tripped and he was sitting next to me. His touch gave me goosebumps that I didn't even know I had. Not to mention his soft hands, it felt so right when they touched me. Tony's gentle gesture really stood out for me. I felt a strong connection with him from the start. He didn't have to say much or try hard to win me over. Just his gentle demeanor and good looks were enough to draw me in. We had a great conversation and shared a lot of laughs. It was a truly enjoyable experience. He made me forget about everything else and made me feel like there was nothing else in the world but him. I even forgot that we were at my cousin's wedding. I had found a friend and a potential partner in him. I thought I had found the one my soul needed. He was the answer to my prayers. He was a big dreamer and a successful man who still had goals to be more successful than he was. I love a man who knows what they want and makes every effort to achieve it. At that time, I had a plan to start my own internet cafe and coffee shop. With Tony's knowledge and skills, I knew I had gained resources to help me start a successful internet cafe. It seemed like a blessing in disguise. With Tony by my side, I would have everything figured out. With Tony's help, I was able to make my internet cafe a success. He taught me a lot about the business side of things that I didn't know. I wanted to start an internet cafe because there wasn't one in Sicily, only in big cities, which was far from where I was staying. I wanted to help my community get easy access to the internet without even having to go to the big city for it. I made it specifically for students so that they can have easy access to the internet and be able to find school projects and information in it without having to waste time. Tony helped me set up the internet cafe, which was really kind of him. I was grateful for the service he provided. He also offered to be a computer tutor, and every minute we spent together was priceless. I still melted in his touch and his voice. He had a way of making me feel like I'd been given some voodoo. I think he used voodoo to make my heart palpitate. Months later, Tony declared his love for me. I had already felt something for him. I was falling for him pretty hard, but I couldn't tell him. I was protecting my heart from being rejected and my ego and pride. He told me how much he enjoys spending time with me and thanked me for trusting him with my community children and students. Tony wasn't from Sicily, but he had first come for the wedding, which was the first day that we had first met. Tony and I dated for 2 years. We were still in the phase of knowing each other very well before we tied the knot. It was the best option. It also gave us time to learn more about each other. I was happy that Tony wasn't rushing into marriage. We were committed to each other for about 1.5 years, and then he proposed. My love for him kept growing. I don't know if I was getting obsessed with Tony, but I couldn't live without him. Even if he wasn't around or we weren't talking, I felt like he was up to no good. You know when you try to contact your partner and his phone keeps putting you on hold? Sometimes he'd be unavailable to chat or I'd get voicemail. I was feeling insecure and didn't want anyone else to know about Tony. He was mine, and I wanted to keep it that way. Tony was based in Agrigento on Sicily's southern coast, while I lived in Piazza Armerina, about an hour's drive away. He'd go home for a week or so, then come and see me when he could. Our love grew stronger every time we spent time together. We were in touch months later, after 2 years of dating. We got married on our dating anniversary. It's really nice and fulfilling spending the rest of your life with your favorite person, who is also your partner. We got to share all our flaws, our dreams, our future and plans. After getting married, we moved to SEU, where we wanted to start our own family. We were living the dream, and I couldn't be much happier. I mean, why wouldn't you be happy when you have been given a chance to spend the rest of your life with your favorite person? You get to spend the rest of your life with someone you fell in love with on the first day you met them. I fell in love with Tony the day we first met. I knew he was my soulmate and my caregiver. He didn't have to try hard to make me happy or feel complete. He knew how to make me feel better on dull days. He always knew how to put a smile on my face. But I don't know how I would answer if I was asked why I cheated or dated his friend. I don't have a response for that anyway. Time passed. Tony started getting too busy to spend time with me. The intimate moments were still fine, but I needed his attention and wanted to spend more time with him. We had stayed far away from each other for almost 2 years when we were still dating. Ever since we got married, we had spent a couple of times together. We would go out to eat or play games. My relationship with Tony was great because we would always allow ourselves to be young again, playing games, going out on ice cream dates, and attending. We had a great time at the exhibitions. We were relaxed and enjoyed ourselves. It was like we were in our own world, doing our own thing. So, on a sunny Saturday, Tony had gone out to buy meat. He'd asked me to prepare something, as his friends were coming over to celebrate his other friend's arrival in Italy. I'd heard that he was in Los Angeles, but he'd relocated to this side. So, I prepared everything, and Tony's other friends started coming with their partners. Everyone was having a good time until the man. The day of the event arrived. I remember thinking, I feel like I'm looking at Jesus himself. That's how striking he was. His body was well-toned, his mustache was neatly trimmed, and his eyes were a sexy, hazel blue. I was taken aback by the guy. He was really handsome. You know, the kind of handsome Leonardo DiCaprio. His eyes looked naughty, though, and I love being naughty. The guy wasn't at my wedding with Tony. I had heard that he was working since he was a doctor. The guy was introduced as Bradley Mail, 33. His appearance was charming and memorable. You know when you see someone for the first time and instantly feel attracted to them? That's how I felt with Bradley. I wasn't attracted to him just because he was handsome. I would sometimes imagine being intimate with him. I imagined us riding and grinding each other. My imagination ran wild to a point where I saw him exploring my whole body, his pinkish sexy lips kissing every fiber of my body. I know it was wrong of me to drool and think like that for my husband's friend, but I couldn't help it. The guy was everything and more. I just wanted or craved one night with him. Then it would have been enough for me. I know I'm a loose cannon, but how was I supposed to stop? I couldn't stop thinking about the poor guy. He was going to be staying with us for a while, until he got his own place, so I was really feeling the pressure. I know it's wrong to have these kinds of thoughts about your husband's friend, but I couldn't help it. I thought that if I had just one night with him, it would solve everything. Bradley was a great guy, but he was also a bit extreme. He was very handsome and had a way of speaking that would make any woman fall for him. I was still staying with him for a while after that. Bradley is a cool guy. He's carefree, talkative and funny. He adjusted well to the new environment and was doing well. I saw him working out a few times in the morning. His abs were impressive. I felt like I would touch them. I had so many dirty thoughts for the poor guy, and I really wanted I had to stop thinking like that about my husband's friend. That week, I was in the kitchen preparing breakfast for both of us. He came in wearing only a very tight vest and jogging shorts. He just stayed with me in the kitchen, keeping me company. He probably thought that his company was he started asking me about my relationship with Tony, wanting to know how it was. I told him what he needed to hear and found it enough to share. I couldn't tell him everything about my marriage, though. Yes, he was my husband's friend, but I couldn't tell him everything that is going on between Tony and me. Tony and I had been having a lot of arguments recently about him being away a lot, even when his friend is around. This led to a very heated argument between my husband and I. We were slowly drifting apart. We still loved each other, but we were drifting apart. I felt like I think he was trying to push me away because even when he was stressed or under pressure, he no longer confided in me as his wife. I would sometimes wonder who he confided in if he was shutting me out like that. It really hurt me having to beg every day for your partner to give you the attention you need. The more time I spent with Bradley, the closer we got. I ended up confiding in him about Tony's behavior because it was really shocking to me. I didn't know who to talk to, so Bradley was the only person who was willing to listen to me vent about my marriage. I know I shouldn't have done that, but I just couldn't help myself. I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. I was at breaking point and needed to talk. Bradley was there for me, making snacks and offering support. I appreciated the time we spent together. Bradley was there for me when I needed him. I was venting and he listened. I was upset and crying. Bradley hugged me and promised he would speak to Tony. Tony had been distant, especially after our argument. He started going to work early and coming home late. When Bradley arrived back late at night, he gave me a hug that was exactly what I needed. It was the kind of hug that is warm and welcoming, the kind that makes you feel like everything is going to be okay. As we were still hugging, I found myself kissing him. We kissed, and things got out of hand. Before I knew it, we were doing the deed. I should mention that at the time, I'd forgotten Tony had recently installed CCTV cameras in the house. I'd completely forgotten about that, and Bradley didn't even know about it since that day. Bradley and I continued seeing each other, and sometimes we'd get intimate in my marital home while at other times, we would go to the nearest hotel to spend the day. We couldn't book for the night because my husband would be suspicious. We did our thing carefully because if Tony found us, we both knew we'd face consequences. I'd be left as a divorced woman. He was really sweet and gentle, but he was also very passionate. He knew how to explore a woman's body and make her feel foreign and end up speaking in tongues. He knew every spot to touch to make me submit to his commands. He loved gentle, rough, and intimate moments. I didn't even know that there was actually gentle. Bradley taught me a lot about rough intimacy. I learned some new positions that some people might think are extreme, but they're actually very enjoyable and nice. I wasn't a submissive wife to my husband, but with Bradley, I was submissive without even thinking twice. My husband loved missionary intimacy, but Bradley I enjoyed learning about new positions. My husband was usually only interested in 1 or 2 rounds, but Bradley was very enthusiastic. He was very intense in bed and would go on for hours, sometimes even waking me up in the morning. He always left me feeling satisfied and tired. He was an expert at what he did, and I still think he was the best. My relationship with Bradley lasted about 9 months. We were still careful, but Bradley wanted us to be seen in public as a couple. I wasn't comfortable with that. I was enjoying the intimacy and everything that Bradley was offering, but I loved my husband and wouldn't just leave him for someone like Bradley. He's been good for me and has explored my body in ways I'd been wanting, but I wouldn't leave my husband to be with him. He didn't get that our relationship was just about intimacy. He'd fallen for me, which wasn't what we'd agreed. It was just about physical intimacy. A few weeks later, I ended my affair with Bradley. I felt like I'd ruined my marriage. I shouldn't have allowed temptation and desire to control me like that. I should have respected myself and my marriage with Tony. Bradley had started to develop feelings for me, and it wasn't going well. We would sometimes argue about his obsessive behavior. I don't know why he suddenly became so. We'd agreed there'd be no strings attached, but he decided to attach some strings to our arrangement and it all fell apart. I went back to my marital home. I'd like to move to a new place with Tony because the house holds so many memories, even the memory of me committing I'd never been unfaithful in my marital home before. I felt like I'd disrespected my husband, and there was no way to undo what I'd done. I knew I'd wanted Bradley at least once, but it shouldn't have escalated like it did. Guess what happened? I was **. A few days later, Tony was back at home while he was working from home. I was really struggling with the guilt. I tried to act normal around my husband, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew something was wrong. I couldn't bear looking at him and acting like a happy wife. While I knew what I had done, Tony was as nonchalant as ever and didn't seem to notice anything. I missed the guilt and anxiety of my mistake. It grew with each passing day. The following week, it was a Monday afternoon. I was watering the garden when our family lawyer came to the house. I was so confused by why Hamilton I knew our lawyer wouldn't come to the house unless it was important or urgent, so I started getting nervous. My mind kept going back to Tony. I thought something must have happened to him. I couldn't bear to think of myself as a widow. My mind kept taking me to places I didn't want to go. Hamilton asked to speak with me and said it was important. I knew he wouldn't leave his fancy office and come to my house if it wasn't important, so we went inside and he gave me an envelope. He said Tony sent it and I should read everything properly first. He told me I was free to fight and try to save whatever I could after signing, but he didn't think fighting would be a good idea. The way he was speaking in riddles, I got conscious and ended up opening the envelope. When I opened it, I couldn't believe my eyes. I was so shocked, I felt like my heart was being stepped on by an elephant and my body was hit by a truck. I was lost for words. I told Hamilton that I wouldn't let Tony divorce me without a fight and I wasn't going to sign those divorce papers. I didn't understand why Tony would want to divorce me. What had I done to deserve that? I kept trying to make sense of it all and asking myself why Tony suddenly wanted to divorce me. A few days later, Tony and I were in the magistrate's office with both our lawyers. I couldn't just let him take everything away from me. I was asked to explain why I didn't want to sign the divorce papers. I told them that I couldn't let Tony, my husband, leave me without any explanation as to why he suddenly decided that he wanted to divorce me and take our home. I couldn't just let him break my heart like that. When it was Tony's turn to speak or defend himself, he said some of the worst hurtful things to me. He called me names and said that if he'd known I was a witch, he wouldn't have married me. He said that when we met, he was furious to see that even temple veins were popping. He looked murderous and he wasn't the Tony I'd married. Then he dropped a huge bomb on me. He told me that he knew about my affair with Bradley, his friend. He also said that I had been seen going to the hotel with Bradley when he was at work. I couldn't believe how he got the information. He told me that he had been acting like everything was normal and okay, but that he knew all the dirt. He said he wants nothing to do with me and that I should just go back home and continue running my internet cafe and coffee shop. I denied every allegation that he was accusing me of. I even denied being in any relationship with Bradley while I was still fighting with Tony. Hamilton had a USB and he showed Tony all the evidence of my affair. I didn't know what to say nor did I have any way back. I didn't even know how to defend myself. It was really humiliating and embarrassing. I tried to apologize to Tony, but he didn't want to hear anything from me. I had no other choice but to obey his request. I went back home and signed the papers. Even today, when I think of everything, my heart breaks. I miss Tony so much and I regret everything that I have done. What should I do to get my husband back? I can't let him go like that. I need advice quickly.